Hi, this is how to replace a tub seal and bearing on a Speed Queen commercial top loading washing machine with the following details. Always before you start, make sure you unplug it from the power point, and to begin with, remove the two screws at the front here and here, and then the front panel will come off, exposing the underneath of the washing machine. Next, you'll want to remove the two screws that hold the lid on. So there's one here and one here, and once they're out, the top will just lift up and fold back, and it's supported by its own hinges, so it won't go any further than that. Next, we'll need to remove the center cap like that, and then normally with a pair of pliers, there is a center pole down in here, and if you grab that firmly with some pliers, give it a pull. Nope, that didn't work. Next, you'll want to remove the center cap. So just a good pull on that will pop the lid off, and that will expose a little center pin in here, which I just use some pliers to grab and pull up, and that'll remove the agitator, exposing the mount underneath. Using a flat blade screwdriver, just loosen the hose clamp off here. This is the filler hose on the neck ring, so if we just undo that enough to pry this hose off, which I should have done it, a bit of wiggle, and just set that aside. And then next minute we want to actually take the neck ring off. So if you look around the edges, there's these clamps, so just give them a bit of a pull and work your way around the machine. And once they're all loose, it should just pull off like so. There'll be a rubber seal which you can throw out, as the kit comes with a new one of those as well. Using a socket set, there's the 4 bolts that hold the tub, inner tub I suppose, barrel inside the machine. So we need to undo those 4 bolts and the tub will come away. Yep, so once the 4 bolts are pulled out of the inner barrel, just lift it up and remove. Next, you'll want to remove the rubber cap from the agitator mount, and then using a ratchet unscrew the bolt in the middle, and then once that's loose, some pliers on here and a quick tug should expose the start of the seal. So a lock nut underneath this rubber seal here. This seal is just pushed on. I normally just get my pliers underneath there and give it a work my way around it to lift it up a little. And once it's broken free, you should be able to just rip it off like that, exposing the lock nut. The lock nut, this is the specialty tool which you should be able to buy from the parts supplier, which perfectly fits over this locking nut here, and then we loosen it off with the hammer. A whole bunch of strikes on there to get it off and then wind the nut off. Once you've loosened the lock nut, just take it off. You'll actually find that there's some plastic fingers here that hold the locking nut. So I just normally use a little flat weight screwdriver and start sort of just digging it off, working my way around it to get rid of it, and then just peel it away. The little nylon retainer's been torn away and thrown away. I use a gear puller to get this hub off. So we just set this up, get the fingers underneath, and then screw it away, and it should ease it off. Okay, so the hub's gone now, so we'll leave it at that for a minute. Just over the back here, just put your hand down here, you'll just need to remove the water level return. That just pulls out and it leaves the rubber retainer in the barrel. Then down underneath, we'll need to start disconnecting everything. So again, 100% make sure you've disconnected from the power. Be careful around the capacitor, they will hold charge, they will bite if you are not careful. So up under here is the harness for the motor. There's a clip on the top, so just put your hand in there and push down on the tab, pull the harness off, remove the 2 wires from the capacitor, and also remove the earth clip from the side of the motor. Next we'll need to remove the drain hose from the tub to the pump, so we can remove the tub eventually, but be aware it will have water in it, so it's going to make a mess on the floor, so be prepared for that. Just undo this screw here and loosen it off, and the pipe will pull away. Next we'll need a hook type tool. I use one of these. It's about 400 millimeters long. We'll need it to remove the springs that are at various locations around the machine. They hold the tub in place. So to do that, I just get my hook in behind the spring there and just give it a pull, just to release the springs. The first few are fairly hard because it's tensioned, but they will get easier as you work your way around, and just leave them out of the way. Yep, so once the springs are released, your hoses are being disconnected and your wiring harness taken off, the barrel, motor, complete assembly should totally lift out of the machine, and just pull it out, put it somewhere. I generally put it on a towel so we don't damage the mount underneath, and then we'll just need to work our way around undoing all the bolts the whole way around that hold the tub to the frame. So do that now. Bolts around the tub are removed. It should simply lift off, exposing the motor and the frame, and then I remove the barrel, and then we'll need to start working on releasing the seal and the bearing underneath, and by doing that it's siliconed around the whole way. I normally cut with a knife just around the edge to try and break that free, and then pry this up and out to release the seal, and at the same time it'll release the bearing on the bottom. Okay, so once removed it should sort of look like this. That's the top part, which you can see I've cut off and pried away. This is the bearing, which is actually up underneath. That should just fall away. So now we have to clean up all of this gunk around here. And I normally use a scraper to clean all this. We probably want to clean, there's a bit of a line around here, we want to clean pretty much all the way out there, because we'll need to put the new bearing in and glue and silicone all this, so it needs to be really nice and clean. Yeah, once it's had a clean up, I just hose it all out and whatever, and it should be sort of, you know, as clean as that would be good enough. For the hundreds I've done that haven't leaked, that's about the level you need to get to, considering you've got a re-silic in it, so it needs to be a clean surface. So this is the kit that you'll require to do the hub lip seal kit for this machine, and it should consist of these parts. Now the assembly continues. This is the bearing and the bottom seal itself. So if you flip the barrel over, you'll notice a locating pin there. So we just want to pop that bearing in there and then just make sure it's sitting in there fine, and then we'll lift the barrel up and place it back on top of the motor, and making sure the bearing and the seal hasn't moved from its position. Once the tub's mounted back onto the motor shaft and the bearing is still nice and seated, you'll have to just make sure that your drain hose lines up with your motor. So you may have to rotate the barrel to get that to line up, and also make sure all your mounting holes line up. So now what I do is go and replace the screws and tighten the barrel back to the chassis. Once all your bolts are done up and the tub's retained to the motor again, I slide it back into the machine. When you do this, make sure right down underneath here is the floating ring that the tub rolls around on, so make sure that's seated properly, nice and even around the machine. Otherwise you're going to have some out of balance issues and banging and crunching happening. Reconnected both the drain hoses. I've reconnected the harness, wiring harness back up, so the two wires on the capacitor, they can go in either position. The motor harness, and most importantly put the earth clamp back on the motor. And while we're going, I've reattached the tub water height hose. Make sure that's seated properly, otherwise you're going to have a leak. So using our hook tool, we're going to reseat all the springs the whole way around the machine. As we do that, just be aware that down here there's actually two holes where the spring goes, so just make sure both sides of the spring are one through and one coming back. It's easy enough to get one stuck underneath and it just won't work properly that way. So make sure they're all sitting right, and then yeah, using the hook tool, pick them up and place them back in the hole. Make sure they're seated properly on this little notch here. Okay, so now that the tub's all back together, secured, springs are in, it's all good, it's all sitting where it's meant to. We just want to run a bead of silicone just on the metal around the bottom lip seal. Try not to go over to the edge into the rubber itself before we place over the retainer. So that'll just sit over there. Get that piece of rubber down in there, just like that first. And then we'll need this little plastic trim ring here. That'll just pop that on the top there. Yeah, so then we'll just grab the new hub, slip it down over the top, give it a bit of a press down, just so the hub's sitting down there, and we'll grab the retaining nut and just screw that down and tighten that by hand. Then we'll grab our special tool and we'll put that on there. We want to tighten this up, probably just by hand, enough that you can't tighten it anymore, and that will push the top seal into the bottom seal and press out the silicon, and I'll show you what we need to look for once that's done. So once we've done that up as hard as we can by hand, then just undo it. We'll take the nut off, and then we'll take the hub off again, like so. We'll remove this little plastic ring that can be disposed of, and we'll want to just see the metal inside the top seal sitting up sort of 2 or 3 millimeters, just like that. If it's not, you may have to repeat the process again. You don't want to over tighten it, so just tighten it up enough by hand. It should get you to that measurement. And now we'll just smooth this silicon out around here, and then we want to add another bead of silicon, a good 2 or 3 centimeters the whole way around, and we'll smooth that out, and that should be enough to seal it. Like I said, I've just sort of siliconed around there. It doesn't have to win any beauty contests as long as it's nice and smooth and sealed, and sort of tapered away about a centimetre or 2 around the whole seal. That's enough. So now we'll need to add the hub onto the shaft. So they do supply, that's the hub there, they do supply the Loctite here, which will drip all the way around this outer edge here on the bottom of the hub. So with good coverage of the Loctite around the bottom of the hub, we'll just need to center that on there and push it down as far as it'll go. Sorry about the camera work. And then we'll need to apply this little nylon ring over the top here, fingers facing upwards, and get that seated properly in the grooves the whole way around here. And then once we've done that, then we'll put the nut back on over the top and screw it down as tight as we can get it. I normally give it a couple of knocks with the hammer to make sure it's on tight, so go ahead and do that. Okay, so now that the retaining nut is on, we'll want to use this seal that goes between the tub and the barrel. So pop that on there. It's got little notch outs that you'll see that'll sort of fit there and it won't turn around. Then we'll need this packet of bolts. There's 4 in there and 4 little rubber washers, so slip those washers on. Then we'll get the inner barrel, set it in there, and then bolt these on to retain it. So as you can see, I've put the inner tub back in, put in the 4 bolts. So now we'll want to put the last seal on, which goes over the shaft like that and push down firmly, so this bottom bit here is nice and even the whole way around and sitting flat. So now the last seal is sitting over the centre shaft there, and it's pushed down nice and even and flat. The next is to put this spline back on. So what we'll need to do is it comes with this little packet of grease here. We just want to sort of smear that around the gearing inside there, and then once we've done that, it'll slide down over the shaft, and then put the retaining bolt in, and once that's done, then the little rubber cap on the top to seal it off. We should be looking like this, so that centre little rubber cap's on, the bolt underneath it is tight, so we can go and put in the agitator again. Just move that around until you find it seats properly, push it down as much as you can until it bottoms out, and then just put the cap back on, give it a tap, and that part's done. So next up we'll put a new seal inside the trim ring before we put it back on, and that's supplied in the kit. So yeah, we're just going to put this rubber seal in underneath the trim ring. Goes in this little channel the whole way around. I find it's best to get that underneath these little tabs. I normally just poke it down gently with a screwdriver and just work my way around until that's complete. Once you put the new tub seal around underneath the lid, put the lid back on, make sure the filler nozzle is at the back of the machine, so it lines up with the filler tube. So we'll just pop that back on, and we'll tighten up our hose clamp there. Then we'll just have to work our way around the top of the machine, pressing down and sealing the top of it, making sure it's all clicked down and nice and level the whole way across, so all the clips are locked in. Fold the top lid back on, replace these bolts either side at the front, up underneath. Then grab your door and put it on, and make sure you get the 2 bolt holes at the bottom. I like to leave the machines out of service for another day or two just while the silicone dries, and then return and just give it a cycle test and making sure everything's running right. And if it all is, then you've done it.